Thanks for tuning in live to Pro Live TV. This is the Our Lads Football Network, and we get the opportunity once again to talk more about the college football season for 2025. And we actually started things off with Ohio State, and that was pretty cool. Kevin Noon did a great job for us, talked to us throughout the playoffs and the championship game last year. So having him first was, I guess you could say, apropos. And now we're talking about the Texas Longhorns, which is interesting because these two teams are going to be fighting it off August 30th, I believe it is, Joe, and or is it 28th? 30th, 28th?
Yeah, it's August 30th. It's up
30th.
Up in Columbus and noon Eastern.
Yeah, so that is an awesome way to kick off the season for a lot of fans. Potentially the top two teams that'll be ranked when the season begins. So Joe Cook is joining us, the managing editor of InsideTexas.com for the very first time on our network. Joe, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it, and looking forward. We're 45 days away, I think, as we're speaking. So it's getting closer and closer.
Yeah, and that's why I think this is a great time because I know there's a closer you get, things are going to get really amped up, especially with this Texas program. So considering how successful things have been the last couple of seasons, and now with Arch as the Heisman favorite to kick off the season and all the expectations, even though the team lost a boatload of talent from last year's class, I got to imagine the fan base, the excitement for the program is at an all-time high.
Yeah, having Arch Manning as a starting quarterback has people really excited. And there are a lot of people in Austin who may have wanted the Arch Manning era to start earlier. It didn't. We're going to get the Arch Manning era this year, and it's really something that I think Texas fans, obviously, and even Steve Sarkisian, has really been looking forward to. Someone who he recruited, who he believes is a perfect fit for his offense, can run the football a little bit, has some athleticism that comes from his dad as opposed to his uncles. And then as we saw against UTSA and against ULM and against Mississippi State, he can throw the ball downfield. It's one of his strengths. So really excited to see that. Got to have some pieces around him step up. He's got to step up, but should be a really fascinating season in Austin.
I got to ask you, and then we'll go into everything else, but just regarding Arch and his patience. Again, not having someone that we could rely on to talk to the last couple of years. That's why it's great to have you on here. Why? I mean, so many other people, this is just unheard of that someone with his talent and his name recognition would have waited 2 years or a third year before he actually decided, okay, yeah, I'm all right with starting on my third season.
Yeah, it's he's even talked about how, his whole life, he's starting, freshman at Isidore Newman. He's the starting quarterback. And, he said basically the only thing that he really wasn't a starter on was the basketball team there. And so he gets to Texas, and not only does he not start right away, which I think he knew was a possibility, with Quinn Ewers there, with Malik Murphy there in 2023. I think he understood that no matter where he went, that it would probably take him a year before he had a chance to really fight for that starting position. But then Quinn Ewers stuck around for an extra year. It was a little bit of a behavior that nobody expected from Quinn, because most of what he and his family have done throughout their career has been with their eyes on getting to the NFL as fast as possible. So to wait one more one more season was surprising. So Arch had to wait again. And Arch got his opportunity. Backup quarterbacks at Texas get their opportunity, it seems. Lots of guys get injured, get hurt. The backup gets to play. Arch Manning comes in, lights up some cruddy teams. Let's not beat around the bush and highlight ULM and Mississippi State. I think they combined to go 7-17 or something like that. So, and then he's back to the backup role. Get some opportunities as kind of a rushing quarterback. They didn't really want to do that much with Quinn Ewers, but wanted to make sure that he was able to use his legs, and now it's going to be his turn. Quinn goes in the 7th round. They brought in a transfer just to add some depth. Matthew Caldwell from Troy, 1-year rental, gives him a little bit of a more secure backup as opposed to a redshirt freshman and a true freshman. But the Arch Manning hype is here. It was big at SEC Media Days. and it's going to continue, all the way up until the season.
How surprised were you, by the way, that because that's another thing? How surprised were you that Quinn went as late as he did, and what was the problem with Quinn last year? What because to me, to outsiders, it seemed like it had to be an injury issue that we just didn't know. When it happens, we get it, but as good as he looked at the end of the 2023 season, it just there wasn't a lot to explain other than it had to be something related to injuries, and then he goes to get drafted extremely late than anybody would have thought. Maybe even him. I don't know whether or not he's second guessing coming out earlier. Maybe that would have been a little bit better for him. But what really was the deal there? Was it injury related? Why do you think he didn't play it up to his standard that a lot of people thought that he was going to do in 2024?
Yeah, I was really surprised to see Quinn fall to the 7th round. I thought he would have been maybe a 4th, 5th round guy. Some of the quarterbacks that were taken ahead of him, it was really surprising. But you can look at it with a fine tooth comb and see Quinn Ewers didn't have great pocket presence. It was one of his weaknesses. He would self sack. I thought he is one of the best quarterbacks I've seen on passes that are 10 yards or 15 yards and under. Over the middle, underneath routes, screens. You take those for granted when they're just right on the money.
Sure.
Wasn't great on the deep ball, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that he's had core injuries and maybe some shoulder issues for almost his whole career at Texas. The Alabama game in 2022, he falls on his shoulder, misses a few games. In 2023 at Houston, misses a few games with some sort of strain. And then in 2024 at UTSA, he has an abdominal strain. I think later on in the year, kind of during the pre-draft process, actually said it was like a strained oblique. And I think, as people know, strains are still tears. They're just, of lower, I guess, not quality, but of lower severity. But it was he said it was a pretty severe oblique strain that he had to play through. I don't know how much of that is true. That at that point, it's a little bit of, what he says, what Steve Sarkisian says. We don't have NFL injury reports quite yet. And Pete Thamel was the main guy who was getting a lot of info out on that story. And so it was injury a lot of times, but Steve Sarkisian stuck with Quinn Ewers. And Quinn Ewers went to the NFL because I think he really wanted to get there. He had, like I said, everything that his family had done from his freshman year at South Lake Carroll all the way to his freshman year at Ohio State to, his first year at Texas was about trying to get to the NFL as quickly as possible. And so they took the 1 extra year. And I do think that he was just ready to start his professional career. Okay. And I don't think he wanted to start his professional career as a Notre Dame quarterback or as an LSU quarterback or Miami quarterback. He wanted to be a Texas quarterback. He's got a Longhorn tattoo on his leg and a Texas flag on his leg. Like this was despite the one semester in Columbus, like this was a Longhorn through and through. And I think he wanted to be remembered that way.
And some people have actually also throw in some questions regarding, well, if Quinn wasn't 100%, if he wasn't on top of his game, and Arch Manning was so good, why didn't Arch Manning play even though Quinn Ewers was available?
It's, that's $1 million question. There are a lot of Texas fans still wondering why Arch wasn't, given the keys when Quinn Ewers was benched for the Georgia game or during that Georgia game, or when Quinn Ewers was injured, why they just didn't start the next era then.
Okay.
And I think, something I said a lot last year is we really, you can really like the idea of Arch, but at that time, all he had done was beat up on some pretty poor defenses. And even then he made some aggressive throws and turned the ball over. So I think that Steve Sarkisian believed that Texas could achieve its national championship aspirations with Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning at the helm, and so stuck with Quinn, believed in what he was able to do. The run game was limited. The downfield passing game was limited. The defense helped so much, and they almost got there. A goal line stand by Ohio State that turns into a fumble 6. If that looks a little bit different, who knows what we're talking about now. But I think Steve Sarkisian was going to be loyal to Quinn until the end, or until he just became unfunctional, I guess is the word back there, and that never happened. And Steve
Nothing
Sarkisian,
wrong with that. Yeah, loyalty is good, and players get that, and they really like that, and it helps them when they decide where to go to. So, okay, so let's kind of fast forward and get ready for this season. So, besides the quarterback room, was there anything as far as the staff? Is everybody, all the key guys back? Are they missing anybody from last year?
So a couple changes. They did lose Tashard Choice, running backs coach. He joined Dan Campbell's staff on the Detroit Lions. Big loss, big recruiter, well liked throughout the entire locker room, throughout
Okay.
the entire building. So lost them. He was replaced by Chad Scott from West Virginia. Decent returns so far. We'll see during the season what really happens, because Tashard Choice was very good developer. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Blake Gideon, a former Longhorn defensive back, the safeties coach, goes to Georgia Tech to be the defensive coordinator, gets a promotion. And then Terry Joseph, the cornerbacks coach, a New Orleans native, goes and joins Kellen Moore's staff on the New Orleans Saints. So
Okay.
they brought in Dwayne Aquina, a longtime veteran defensive back coach, had been at Texas over the course of the 2000 to 2013, something like that. Spent time at Stanford, spent time at Arizona, and it is if there is a big time Texas defensive back in the NFL, he was probably coached by Dwayne Aquina. So Texas fans are glad that he's back, like that name being back. And then Mark Orfe is the corners coach, came from Rutgers. Rutgers actually put a few cornerbacks into the draft these past couple of years, and I know a lot of that is Greg Schiano's a defensive guy, but Mark Orfe had his hand in it too. He's from the Houston area, so he's back in his home state. Other than that, a lot of continuity. Keeping the same play caller, obviously, it's Steve Sarkisian. Same head coach, same defensive play caller, same special teams coordinator.
Okay.
A lot of position coaches have, are in year 2, year 3. So a lot of continuity at Texas. Steve Sarkisian getting to year 5 is, mark a sign that he is, entrenched in this job. So too is his $10 million a year contract. And it's one of those things where at this juncture, a lot of it looks the same, and that helps all these players who are taking on new roles, developing all that, know what to do instead of having a lot of volatility, which Texas had in the 2010s.
Is there any more pressure than usual for Sark regarding now that they're getting close and Arch Manning's here? That let's say Arch stays here for even 2026 and they don't win a championship. I mean, do you still feel that things are at least on a good level from where the program was to where it is now under Sark, that things should still be okay? There's no division at all within the community regarding him as the head coach moving forward.
Yeah, I think at this point with Sark, the big problems are champagne problems. Why didn't you call a better play? Well, that's every play caller.
Yeah.
But it's why didn't you call a better play in the college football playoff semifinal for the second straight year? I think Texas fans obviously expect a lot. And yeah, when you have a quarterback window that goes from Quinn Ewers to Arch Manning to, we'll see who follows him, you feel like your national title window is open, especially when you recruit well, have top ranked classes, when you hit the portal and cherry pick players you need well. Texas is the odds on favorite right now to win the national championship for a reason. And Texas fans want to see it happen. They really want to, get that 20-year drought finished and through with. And Steve Sarkisian is someone that I think Texas fans have a lot of belief in. I'm a big fan of when people say, it's not can't do it, it's haven't done it. I think if you say a coach can't do anything, people were saying Ryan Day can't win a title.
That's true.
Now at that point, he just hasn't won the title yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what the case with Steve Sarkisian is. One of the top 3 rosters in the sport, a lot of continuity, just a lot of positive coming from Texas, whether that's on the trail and with the season upcoming as well.
Before I do want to find out about some of those new players coming in, recruits and transfers, but before we do that, was there any, like, besides the quarterback situation, was there any big storylines coming out of the spring?
I think one of them is I'll give you one on offense, one on defense. Offense, they brought in tight end Jack Endries from Cal,
Oh,
and he's someone who is basically going to go right to the tight end one spot. Texas loses Gunnar Helm, went to the Titans. Before that, they had Jatavian Sanders a year prior, went to the Panthers. So there was those back-to-back years of having an NFL tight end in your offense, and the next man up was a redshirt freshman that there's a lot of faith in, but still unproven. So they went to get injuries. Really reliable chain mover, someone we think Arch Manning is going to target a good amount, and be someone who is there over the middle and on some underneath stuff to help free things up for other Texas receivers. And then on defense, I think you have to look at Michael Taft coming back. That was a secondary last year that featured Jade Barron, who won the Thorpe, and Andrew Makuba, who transferred over from Clemson but was an Austin native. And all those guys were close friends growing up. They had all trained together. They didn't go to the same school, but they just knew each other basically from about ninth grade on, and they finally play in the back end of the Texas Longhorns defense, and they're one of the best defenses in the country. So Jade Barron goes in the first round, Makuba goes in the second, but Michael Taft comes back. And it's not a super inexperienced, secondary. As you can see, you see a lot of SRs and JRs there at the top of that depth chart. So they've liked Jelani McDonald. They're going to ask a lot of Jalen Gilbo at corner, and they're going to ask a lot of Kobe Black at competing with Jalen Gilbo for that corner spot. So
okay.
A lot of experience should be exciting.
Okay, so then, yeah, I mean, I've been doing some of these interviews, and for the most part, I mean, I just did Oklahoma State, and it's like everything is color, which means that they're either a transfer or a freshman, but not here at Texas. So, and that's a good thing when you have a big program like Texas. So, you already talked about one of the key guys that came in via the portal and injuries. So, sticking on offense, they also added Mosley from Stanford. That had to be a really big addition after losing Golden, especially, and a couple of their other top receivers. But Mosley sure had a heck of a freshman season last year.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're adding two West Coast standouts from an East Coast league. Stanford and Cal in the ACC. Mosley, as someone who Steve Sarkisian said they recruited. He sustained a knee injury, I believe, in high school, and that kind of stopped when they were recruiting him. But once he started getting going on the field, he was one of Stanford's, a bright spot of a pretty pitiful Stanford team. And he didn't just rack up his yards against some bad ACC teams. He put it on Louisville, and they had some good defenders last year. So someone who, along with DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo, two guys with a lot of expectations, they expect for him to come in and be a starter. Position-wise, Steve Sarkisian moves everybody so much that it's hard to say that position means he's going to be at that spot.
Okay.
But you'll see him moved all over. You'll probably see him outside a little bit more often. But someone with a little bit of experience and gives some of those highly rated freshmen a little bit time to gel before getting their opportunity.
And speaking of the rest of the portal, we're taking a look at the rivals list. Were there any other guys that are coming in that you think would be key contributors?
Yeah, the guy right there at the top, Rod Watson. I think Texas brought in 5 defensive tackles from the portal, and he was the last one. He had a freshman All-American season at at Syracuse. Enters the portal, Ohio State, Penn State, Miami, all interested in him, but he commits to Texas. And Texas had already brought in 3 in the portal, I believe, in the first window. They added 1 more from Maryland, and then they add Murad Watson. I think he's someone, with the way Texas deploys its defensive tackles, for the most part, you can be a starter, but you're basically getting 30 snaps a game each person.
Yeah.
He's going to be someone, I think, right there on the front line, getting a lot of snaps and making a disruptive impact on the opposing offense.
Yeah, we have, and Tucker does a great job as so hard as especially in college with the depth charts. But do you think, because he has right now Brevard and Shaw as the starters up front, do you think again that it's just interchangeable, not a big deal, or do you think Watson should be along the starting lines? And what about Brevard and Shaw?
Yeah, Brevard, I think, is going to be first guy out there. Shaw, we'll see. I think Watson and Brevard, their skill sets pair pretty well together.
Okay.
I think January and Shaw, their skill sets deployed together would go pretty well. Hero Canoe from Ohio State has gotten a lot of positive reporting as of late. So he's someone who I believe is German and is just still in his early portions of his football career. And then you see Justice Terry there. He's a true freshman 5-star from the state of Georgia, only listed at 268 pounds. So we'll see what happens, what role he fills in. Maybe he gets some more pass rush opportunities or defensive end chances. But Texas feels like at least one of those guys from the defensive tackles that they brought in is going to look good and be what they need from that position after having great play for the last 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. Some of those guys have left. They're in the NFL now. So looks like they've done a pretty good job so far on paper bringing those guys in. Let's talk about the recruiting, which Rivals has as number one in the country. Why not? When they list, I just can't even believe it. Was it 16 4-stars and 4 5-stars, which is just amazing. But in a way, that's I'm sure fans in Texas are like, yeah, that's the way it should be. This is Texas. This is the school in Texas, and that's what our recruiting should look like every year. We should be And now I'm not saying, of course, everyone is from Texas, as we see with their top 3 there, where 3 of the top 4 5-stars are from Texas, but that's the melting pot. That's what you want to take advantage of, and it looks like Sarkisian's did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, he's getting the best that he can from Texas, and he's trying to get the best that he can from all over. Texas has a very good NIL structure and apparatus, and it's also a good program. So you get if you're a high school kid, you or a portal player, you get the best of both worlds. We talked a little bit about Justice Terry, but going up to those other 5-stars, Jonah Williams, he actually enrolled early and ended up being the starting left fielder for the Longhorn baseball team this past year. So he spent a lot of time playing baseball. He's kind of getting back into the swing of things with football. Very athletic, but a safety, even though he's listed as an athlete. Guy who's going to be playing probably a boundary safety role. Someone who's super athletic, but we got to see how he can process. The other 5-stars, one was Kalik Lockett, wide receiver from Saxe. He's got great speed and size and body control. I think if there is going to be a receiver who from that freshman class who steps up, he may be getting an opportunity, but Dalen McCutcheon has earned a lot more mention of late. And then up there, Lance Jackson, honestly, a no-nonsense recruitment. He's a little brother of Landon Jackson, who started his career at LSU, goes to Arkansas, gets picked in the draft. He had a previous relationship with Texas defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski when he was up at Washington, because Kwiatkowski was recruiting Landon Jackson. They maintained that recruitment, goes up to Texarkana, gets him, and he's going to be, I think, a really special player down the line. So a lot of stars in that class, and I'll hit the quarterback real quick. KJ Lacey from Saraland, Alabama, just outside Mobile. He had Ryan Williams, of Alabama fame, to throw to for a few of his seasons there in Alabama. Okay. Ryan Williams graduates early, and KJ Lacey doesn't take a step back. He's still playing really well. He's probably right at 6 foot 180. Has a lot of great movement skills and really good arm talent, but he's slight. He's not a gunslinger by any means. And he's going to have to learn what's a complicated offense. So should be a lot of fun to track him as he gets going in his career. Texas does not offer very many quarterbacks. They wanted him. They got him, and he jumped in the fold pretty quick.
And here we have Owens as the number 2, and Caldwell, who you mentioned, the transfer 3, and there's Lacey 4. if Manning were to go down at all, as you mentioned, Texas quarterbacks go down. So if Manning were to go down for a couple of games, is there a definite number two?
I think that's to be determined. I
Okay.
think that they brought in Caldwell because they wanted that veteran. In case of emergency, do you want to put a national championship type season on the hands of a redshirt freshman who has not started a game? Granted, he's from Troy, Jacksonville State, Gardner Webb. It's not like he's tearing up the highest levels, but he fits what Texas wants to do, and you know that he's going to be someone who is able to operate the offense. May not make any wow plays, but it may make the plays that you need to get in and get out of the game. Now, if it's okay, you got to start this guy for 5 games or something, I don't know who they're going to go with. I think it looks a little bit different, but Texas hopes they don't have to have that problem. Even so, that's why they brought in Caldwell to
Okay.
have a chance to have an experienced guy to steady the ship.
Who would be considered breakout material? Players that are kind of, whether they've bided their time, like an Arch Manning. He would be the premier breakout player in all of college football. But if you had to add a couple more players who are ready to maybe take that next step, holdovers from last year's team on both offense and defense, who would you point to?
Yeah, I'd tell people to keep an eye out on C.J. Baxter, and I know it's hard to say when he's a former 5-star, but he missed all of last year after suffering ligament injuries in his knee during camp, and he had high expectations. He actually started during his true freshman season over Jonathan Brooks, got dinged up a little bit, and then Jonathan Brooks and him swapped, but Brooks took over. Until he was injured. So Baxter was entering last year as the guy, gets hurt, and Texas run game struggles as a result. I know Quintravian Weiser hit 1,000 yards, but it wasn't the type of run game where against the elite opponents, the really good defenses, they really had much of a push.
Okay.
Maybe C.J. Baxter at 6'1", 230 can make things a little bit different in that regard. But a lot of optimism about what he might be able to do within the program coming back from injury.
Okay. Anyone else on offense, or he would be the guy?
I think he's the guy. If you want to pick an O lineman, left tackle Trevor Gooseby, standing in for Kelvin Banks, big shoes to fill. But he had to do it against, I think, Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M last year, got some opportunities and looked right at home, playing left tackle to where Texas thinks they have another high draft pick on their hands protecting Arch Manning's blind side.
And that's a huge position, the unit itself. That is, matter of fact, if you look at it, the line of scrimmage where games are won and lost, usually in football, those are the major question marks, if there are question marks on this Texas team, because of the losses you mentioned on the inside of defensive tackle and also along the offensive line. Are they replacing 4 starters, I believe?
They are replacing 4 starters, but when you look at that, Trevor Gooseby standing in for Kelvin Banks, he's a third-year player with starts, with action in the college football playoff, in the SEC championship game. So he's not just, stepping up off the bench.
Sure.
Neto Umeozulu, 4th-year player, massive player, has seen action, not very many starts, but a 4th-year player. And I've been saying kind of all off season, like if you have to replace 4 starters, you might as well make the most of it and get guys who have been in the program for a while. Even though Cole Hudson is not a returning starter, he's played in, I think, like 30 games. He used to rotate with DJ Campbell at guard. So he has plenty of experience, even if it's not as a returning starter. DJ Campbell is a returning starter.
Okay.
The only guy from that line who's from last year's line who stuck around, going to be a leader. High expectations on him. They feel like they kind of know what they have at each spot, with the exception of right tackle. And I think you got it right there. Brandon Baker and Andre Kojo battling it out. Andre Kojo is young for his age. You see he's a redshirt sophomore, and I think he's only 19 or maybe even just barely 20. So he's young. Brandon Baker's a 5-star from California. Maybe doesn't look exactly like your typical tackle, but has good feet. And I really feel like that's the battle to watch throughout camp, is who steps up and takes that right tackle spot.
Okay, and then anyone on defense that you think would be a player to watch that's ready for a breakout?
I don't think Colin Simmons fits because he's already well thought of in college football. A lot of top 10 players lists include him in the top 10. I think he is going to stand out this year. But Jelani McDonald, someone who's super
Okay.
versatile playing in the defensive secondary. He may see some time at playing nickel, which he did last year. He may see some time at deep safety. And he's someone who a lot of people just rave about his enthusiasm for the game. Someone who plays the game, like it is a game and not a job. And really, you can see his joy that way. And he had a great interception last year against Kentucky, just a wow play that kind of highlights some of what he can bring to the table. He'll be stepping in, replacing Andrew Makuba. Big shoes to fill, but Jelani McDonald, as you can tell, he's a junior. He's got experience playing the position. It's not something where it's like, okay, you have this superb athlete who can't process. Like he's proven he can see it and read and react a little bit.
Okay, holdovers, the top guys to keep an eye on for the program. You already mentioned Simmons. Anthony Hill just looks like
Yeah.
he could just be even who knows how good now that he might be entering his last season. Who knows? And then you got Trey Moore, who's always made some plays that we've seen from time to time. To mention Michael Taft. So are those the primary four guys on defense? Are there any other standouts on defense that we should be aware of that were already standouts last year? Or do we hit the right four?
I think you hit him. Leonga Lafau, there at will linebacker. I think he'll be someone who is great in coverage this year, working right by Anthony Hill. And then Ethan Burke up there at that jack position. He watched Barron Sorrell get drafted by the hometown Saints last year. Now he's someone who basically split time with Sorrell, and the job is now all his. Someone there's a lot of confidence in, and someone who's been playing good football for Texas for at least 3 seasons.
Okay. And how about on offense? Obviously, we know about a few of them we've already talked about. Is there anybody we didn't talk about? Maybe the receivers outside of Mosley? Is there a receiver maybe that is have already proven himself in a way, but maybe we just don't know as much as we should?
Yeah, Ryan Wingo was a freshman last year, and I think he picked up right around 500 total yards. He had some end arounds for rushes, but he had about 400. I think of just around 400 something receiving yards. And there was the upper tier of Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams as far as freshman wide receivers go. Ryan Wingo was right behind him,
Okay.
but he was behind him. He was sometimes more athlete than wide receiver. That's a big thing he's had to adjust this year. But he's got good rapport with Arch Manning. They came in the same class, and that's someone who you might wouldn't be surprised to see that being a number 1 target this year.
Before we kind of wrap up, and I want to wrap up with the Ohio State game and a few other things regarding the expectations of the team for the season. Are there any key injuries or anything like that that we need to keep an eye on? Anybody that may or may not be ready to start the season?
Yeah, got to make sure CJ Baxter comes back fully healthy because he injured himself in camp last year. Similar for Christian Clark, another running back. Those guys got hurt in basically the span of 3 days. So Texas lost 2 running backs who were going to play a good amount last year in the span of 3 days of the last year. Both are participating. Both seem like they're going to be ready to go. That's about it. They kind of dialed things back over the course of spring practice because they played 16 games. There were some players who were pretty beat up, as you might expect, playing 16 games, going through a college football playoff. So they dialed things back, tried to get some guys some rest, try to get some younger guys some reps, and as a result, they came out of it pretty healthy.